interview with Will Hagan. Take one. We're only doing this twice, so take one. Hello and welcome to The Voice. My name is Joseph Salama. I'm one of the editors, and I'm here today in Condon with Will Hagan, Vice President candidate for Imagine UW. Thanks for coming out on a few minutes before a forum here.
It's my pleasure, Joseph. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me just jump right in here with some of the questions we have prepared. So,
great.
Briefly discuss how the budget process works within ASUW, if you know, and if elected, what role you would have in those discussions.
So, as I understand it, the different entities and enterprises of ASUW will come to the board of directors and say, this is what we need, and then money is budgeted appropriately. You know, student fees are adjusted, things like that. And the second part of the question was, again, I'm sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. What would your role be in these discussions?
It's making sure, my role as I see it, is making sure that student money is used as effectively as possible. Going through line by line, if need be, and saying, all right, are we sure that this is entirely necessary as an expenditure, and will this program benefit students?
Yeah, absolutely. So our next question, kind of going off of that one, is the Vice President oversees the enterprises and assists with their goal setting and oversees their general performance, working with the experimental college, the bike shop, and off-campus housing affairs, which is not technically an enterprise, but does have revenue projections. What aspects of the performance will you be closely examining, and how do you see yourself working with those directors to strengthen the entities?
Again, for me, it comes down to financial responsibility, making sure that those student fees are being used effectively, efficiently, and in ways that will benefit students the most. I think in my 3 years at the UW, I haven't seen a whole lot necessarily that has directly benefited me. I'd like to see more directly benefiting each and every student on this campus, because we all pay a great deal in student fees, and those entities, those programs, those organizations, they have a great deal of potential to benefit students, and I'd like to see that potential realized.
Yeah, absolutely. In years past, the vice president position was more or less a coordinator of volunteers, helping to bring individuals into the fold of ASUW and train them. This year, there's been a reform of the vice president position, and now it's more internally focused.
Right.
What have you been doing to familiar yourselves with the entities and enterprises you'll be working closely with?
I've been doing quite a bit of research, looking online and saying, okay, this is what this organization does, this is how it does it. I had the great pleasure of sitting down with Eric Schellen, current vice president, and he took me through ASUW's budget, showing me pie charts and bar graphs and things that most people don't find interesting, but I actually do. I was able to sit down with you as director of OCHA, Off-Campus Housing Affairs, and you gave me a sort of a crash course, and that was really, really informative. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. This position calls on you to be the liaison to the BOD for the big three. This one kind of goes back into some of the experiences you just talked about, but how you will help these entities in supporting their larger goals?
Well, I'd like to sit down with the director of each of those big three, preferably on a weekly basis, but bi-weekly if necessary, and just get regular updates on what they did the past week, what they're planning on doing the next week, the next month, so on. Creating doing strategic planning, basically, saying, okay, this is what I'd like to do in the next year, or this is what I'd like one of these organizations to do in the next year, this is what I'd like to do 5 years down the road, things like that. Long-term growth is what I'd like to focus on.
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of going off of that, do you believe there's anything missing from the strategic goals established by this year's board of directors?
I think the biggest thing that's missing is actually visibility. I was able to go through the strategic goals with Eric. They look solid. But the thing is, I don't think most students know what those strategic goals are. And if there were a greater student awareness, I think that'd be tremendously helpful. Getting all the students involved and saying, okay, this is what ASUW wants to do down the line. How can I help?
Yeah, absolutely. And our last question is, you'll be working with the finance and budget director to formulate the budget for our return back to the Husky Union building, where ASUW will be in one centralized suite, whereas in years past we've been delocalized all over several floors of a building. How will that centralization, how will the move back to the hub affect the budgeting process for next year?
I think it's going to make it a whole lot easier. If I have a question, or if the vice president has a question, he can just walk down the hall and say, to the OCHA director or to the bike shop, the people in the bike shop,
Yeah.
what is this about? What is this line item here, and what is this going to? Things like that. And is there anything that you think is missing? Things of that nature. Just a much more personal budget process, which I think is beneficial.
Yeah, absolutely. That's all the time we have